I'm Shaun Duncan, representing the TCM Group. And I want to just look at Africa to start. Should be. Okay, let me do South Africa first, and then I'm going to come back and do Nigeria as well. But before I start on that, I just want to say, James, thank you very much. You've made a lot of Africa a lot more understanding for me, and we'll cover some of that. Just in terms of Africa, I just want to start with where we are. Africa is the second largest and second most populous continent in the world in terms of land size, just over 30 million square kilometers. Population is sitting at just over 1.1 billion people. We cover 6% of the world, but just over 20% of the land mass. So fairly sizable. In terms of South Africa, you will see we right down the bottom, southernmost tip of Africa. What we do have is 9 provinces within the country. The smallest province is the economical hub of the country, and that is Gauteng. If we have a look at our land size, we are just over 1.2 million kilometers in size, and we are 4% of Africa's land size. In terms of our population, and that's where I started, we're sitting at just under 55 million people. If we have a look at our split, we are sitting with just over 80% of our population is black people. 8.7% of our population is colored people. 8.2% is white people. And 2.6% is made up of the Indian population. So we've got really the 4 diverse areas within the country. One of our biggest problems is unemployment, sitting at officially just under 30%. But what that does do is it excludes people who are not recorded because they simply do work in townships or in areas where it is not recognized. So if you were to take that into account, our official unemployment rate is closer to 35–40%. We have 11 official languages, so it does become very difficult dealing with individuals because you have English, Afrikaans, and then you have 9 official black languages. So from a business perspective, generally you need to have somebody in your business that speaks all of those 11 official languages. Because once it goes wrong, all of a sudden the person who could speak English now doesn't speak English. And you've got to explain things to them in their native tongue. Okay? Again, a stalling tactic. Just in terms of South Africa, we are unfortunate in that we have a large amount of crime, and I think that follows through. If you have a country with a very, very large unemployment rate, crime unfortunately follows. So we are stuck with a big problem, and it affects us on a daily basis. And I now understand a lot more about why we're in the position we're in. And I really don't believe that Africa is unique. I think it's a worldwide phenomenon. So I know you can all read, but this slide tells you that we in Africa are very good at some of the things we do. Not necessarily the right things, but let's have a look at how good we are compared to the rest of the world. If I just take asset misappropriation, companies have assets on site today, and guess what happens tomorrow? It's gone. How did it go? Nobody knows. Security guy doesn't know. The driver doesn't know. Just disappeared overnight. We do things very, very well in South Africa. If I have a look at procurement fraud, 59%, double what our counterparts are. Bribery and corruption, we are perfect. We are the best you can get. I wasn't aware that it happens in Hungary and other places. So we double everybody else. If I have a look at human resource fraud, if I have a look at financial statements, cybercrime, we Africans are very good at what we do. The sad part. is that our energies are focused in a lot of the wrong areas, as you can see. But the reason that happens is it's easy money. And it's easy to sit back, not work, and get paid. Okay? I think they call that the dole in the UK, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Okay. So we've got a slightly different process. They just steal to make the money. Okay. So we do have a lot of the right things that are done in South Africa, but I think one has to be aware of the problems and the potential fraud if you are dealing with Africa. In terms of our challenges, I think the biggest challenge South Africa has is politics. And I think, unfortunately, currently, one of the biggest problems that people are now realizing in South Africa is the state capture that has occurred due to our president. We've also had a problem in terms of our downgrading of our debt rating, which obviously has an impact on the cost of funding for the country. So those are the two main challenges that we have: political, and then we've got the downgrading, which obviously increases the cost of funding, which increases everything else that follows through. Corruption. What can I say about corruption? Corruption is a worldwide phenomenon. But I think we in Africa are very, very good at that. And until we are able to resolve the issue of greed within our leadership, and what I mean by greed is that a lot of the decisions that are made for the wrong reasons. And those reasons are to maximize the wealth of the minority to the detriment of the majority. And that's why we have a lot of poverty. The big issue now is that there is a family that has been accused of running the country, and that is the Gupta family. And they have been buying up a lot of assets within the country, major assets, or alternatively setting up companies that do business with those major companies. The net effect of that is that the cost of whatever those assets do, in other words, if it supplies coal to our electricity plants, the prices increased 4- or 5-fold. Why does that happen? Because I've got to pay you, I've got to pay you, and I've got to pay you, instead of this person going straight to the source. But we create employment. And the net effect is that we're paying 3, 4, 5 times the price. The net effect is the taxpayer has to bear that burden. And what do we have to do? Very little, because it's all set by government and the senior officials within government. Okay, we are officially, in South Africa, in recession. I think that we are starting to come out of it, but I do think it's going to take probably 5, 6, 7 months before we start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. But officially, that's where we are. The other problem is the high level of unemployment. And as I said earlier on, unemployment leads to crime. It's unfortunate. And the problem is that I'm not 100% sure that our government really wants to create employment. And I'll clarify that. If you keep the bulk of your population semi-literate, and they don't really understand what's happening in politics, when we come to vote every 4 years, if I buy you lunch, and I give you a T-shirt, and I give you a cap, just before you go in to vote, who are you going to vote for? You're going to vote for me. Because now I understand. As we only remember what happened yesterday, we don't remember what happened 3, 4, 5 years ago. I'm there for instant reward. So that's one of the problems we face. Well, in terms of general collections, I think the culture in South Africa is that people want to pay. It's not a case of them deciding that they just don't want to pay. They want to get the goods and they want to get whatever they've purchased for nothing. The problem we have is if you take B2B, I order something and I've ordered it to on-sell it. I've on-sold it. My problem is collecting that debt. And if that debt isn't paid on time, it delays my ability to pay as well. So generally on a B2B point of view, is that it's a delayed effect because other people haven't paid. So net effect is that where you have a 30-day term, that gets stretched to 90 to 120 days. The problem is that you can't go legal. Could go legal. But our courts are so backed up, and there's so much corruption in the courts, that if anybody wants to defend something, it is cheaper for them to pay an attorney to defend than to actually pay the money. So they get an extra 30, 60, 90 days. And then what they do is they come back and they say, well, I'll settle at half the price. The other half that you've lost has gone to legal fees. So that happens. In terms of individuals, generally, we're all over indebted. So net effect is that you've got 4, 5, 6, 7 different creditors chasing the same individual who doesn't have sufficient disposable income to pay. So the net effect is that they do want to pay, but they have to pay over an extended period of time. So a loan that should have been paid off in 12 months is now getting paid off in 36 months. Alternatively, if you have a retail account that should be paid every single month, you're not paying it every single month. You've spent up to your maximum limit, and you now have an interest-free loan because we're going to chase you, and you're going to agree to pay it off over 24 months. So there are some problems, but the net effect is that people do want to pay, and that's the message I want to leave you with, is that it's a case of circumstances. Okay. Just not sure if it's me or I'm not sure. Is it time blocked? Okay, sorry, thank you. Obviously, the complication now is when you have 11 official languages, and unfortunately I only speak one. I speak a little bit of Afrikaans, but very limited. So in most businesses, you have to, as I said earlier on, you have to have the ability to communicate. And it goes back to what I said in the first place, is that how do you stall your creditors? Suddenly you don't understand what they said. You don't understand the document because the document was in English and I speak Sotho or I speak Zulu. So a lot of those type of problems, again, it's just a stalling tactic. That's all it is. Right. In terms of opportunities, there are opportunities in South Africa as well as the rest of Africa. The problem with a lot of entrepreneurs is that they don't have the physical cash to invest in their businesses. They also don't have the security to enable them to raise the finance through banks to run their business. So net effect is they start their business with a shortage of working capital. So what do? Delay paying your creditors. And your creditors start funding your business. And then you hope that your debtors are going to start paying you, but they don't pay you. So that's how the ball continues, is that you're undercapitalized and you're using your creditors to fund your business, and you have to continue using it because the debtors are delaying paying as well. So, vicious circle. The other problem we have, and if you look at South Africa historically, I don't think we've always been fair to everybody. So the net effect now is that the new government is saying that we now need to work things back, and we're now all forced to have a 51% black ownership in our businesses if you want to do work for government. Makes it difficult. Okay. Mark, out of time? That's it? Good. I hope you understand a little bit more about South Africa. And the white guy from Africa will be back to talk to you about Nigeria.